The morning started like every other morning for the past 3 years. Tyler woke up in his tiny studio apartment, the kind where you could touch the stove from your bed if you stretched far enough. The alarm on his phone buzzed at 6:30, and he hit snooze twice before finally dragging himself up. His guitar was leaning against the wall in the corner, right where he left it the night before after practicing until his fingers hurt. He worked the night shift at a warehouse on the edge of the city. It wasn't the dream, but it paid the bills. Barely. Most nights he'd load boxes onto trucks until his back ached and his hands were raw. Then he'd come home, sleep a few hours, and spend his afternoons doing what he really loved. Writing songs, playing music, chasing something that felt more and more like it might never happen. Tyler had been playing guitar since he was 15. His dad taught him the first few chords on an old acoustic that had been gathering dust in their garage. From that moment on, music was all he cared about. While other kids his age were thinking about college or career paths, Tyler was writing lyrics in the margins of his notebooks and saving every penny for better equipment. Now he was 28, and the dream felt heavier than it used to. Back when he was younger, it seemed inevitable that someone would discover him. He'd play at open mic nights and imagine a record executive sitting in the back of the coffee shop, waiting to offer him a contract. But those moments never came. The executives never showed up. And slowly, the other musicians he knew started getting real jobs, settling down, talking about music like it was just a hobby they used to have. But Tyler couldn't let it go. Even on his worst days, when his bank account was nearly empty and his mom called asking when he was going to get serious about his future, he couldn't imagine doing anything else. Music wasn't just what he did. It was who he was. On this particular Tuesday afternoon, Tyler grabbed his guitar and headed to the park. Riverside Park was about a 20-minute walk from his apartment, and it had become his regular spot over the past few months. There was a nice area near the fountain where people would sit on benches, eat their lunch, or just enjoy the weather. It was a good place to practice, and sometimes people would drop a few dollars in his guitar case. The October air was crisp and cool. Leaves were starting to fall from the trees, covering the walking paths in shades of red and gold. Tyler found his usual bench, the one with the good shade and enough foot traffic to maybe earn some tip money. He opened his guitar case, propped it up on the ground in front of him, and took out his instrument. There were already a few coins in there from yesterday. 2 quarters, a dime, and 3 pennies. 68 cents. He'd need more than that to eat tonight. Tyler started with some covers, songs people would recognize. He played a Beatles tune, then something from the 70s, then a more modern pop song that had been on the radio last year. A few people walked by. Some smiled. One woman stopped for a moment, swayed a little to the music, then kept walking. A jogger tossed a dollar bill into his case without breaking stride. After about 40 minutes, Tyler's fingers were warm and loose. This was when he liked to switch to his original music. The songs he'd written himself. The ones that meant something personal. He'd been working on a new one for the past month. It was a ballad, slower and more emotional than his usual style. The lyrics were about holding on when everything feels like it's falling apart, about finding little moments of light when you're surrounded by darkness. He called it Still Here. Simple title, but it felt right. Tyler closed his eyes and started playing. His fingers moved across the strings with the kind of confidence that only comes from playing the same song 100 times. The melody was soft and haunting, and when he started singing, his voice carried across the park. I'm still here even when the night won't end. I'm still here waiting for the morning to begin. Every step I take feels like I'm walking blind, but I'm still here and I'm going to be fine. He poured everything into that song. All the frustration of working a job he hated, all the loneliness of watching his friends move on with their lives while he stayed stuck. All the tiny, stubborn hope that maybe, just maybe, this was all going to mean something someday. When he opened his eyes after the first verse, he noticed an older man standing a few feet away. The man was probably in his 70s, wearing a gray overcoat and a flat cap. He had kind eyes and a weathered face, the type of person who looked like he'd lived through a lot but hadn't let it make him bitter. Tyler kept playing. The man didn't move. He just stood there listening. Not checking his phone, not looking around distractedly. Actually listening. It had been a long time since anyone had listened like that. Tyler finished the song and the man smiled. That was beautiful, he said. His voice was gentle but firm, the kind of voice that made you believe what he was saying. "Did you write that yourself?" "Yeah," Tyler said, feeling a little shy suddenly. "Just something I've been working on." "It's special," the man said. He walked closer and sat down on the bench next to Tyler. "Do you mind if I stay for a while? I'd like to hear more." "Sure," Tyler said. Of course, and so Tyler played. He played for almost an hour, and the old man sat there the entire time. Between songs they talked. The man's name was Robert. He asked Tyler about his life, his music, how long he'd been playing. Tyler found himself opening up in a way he usually didn't with strangers. There was something about Robert that made him feel safe, like he wouldn't judge or give unwanted advice. Robert told stories too. He talked about when he was younger, about chances he'd taken and chances he'd missed. He spoke about music like he really understood it, not just as entertainment but as something essential, something that connects people in ways nothing else can. "Play that first song again," Robert said eventually, "the one about still being here." So Tyler played it again. Then Robert asked to hear it a third time, and Tyler obliged. Each time he played it, it felt like the song was getting stronger, more real. Like Robert's attention was pulling something deeper out of him. When the sun started getting lower in the sky and the park began to empty out, Robert stood up. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his wallet. Tyler expected maybe a $5 bill, which would have been generous. Instead, Robert pulled out a 50 and placed it carefully in the guitar case. "This is for your music," Robert said, "and for your persistence. Don't give up on this. You have something real." Tyler was stunned. "Sir, this is too much." "I can't." "You can and you will," Robert interrupted gently. "Use it for whatever you need. Food, guitar strings, a night where you don't have to worry. You've earned it." "Thank you," Tyler managed to say. "Really. Thank you so much." Robert smiled and patted him on the shoulder. "What's your full name, son?" "Tyler Morrison." "Tyler Morrison," Robert repeated like he was committing it to memory. "Well, Tyler, it was a pleasure to hear you play. Keep making music. The world needs more people who care about it the way you do." With that, Robert tipped his cap and walked away, his hands in his pockets, disappearing down the path between the trees. Tyler sat there for a long moment, staring at the $50 bill in his case. It was the most anyone had ever given him for his music. But more than that, it was the way Robert had listened. The way he'd asked to hear the song multiple times. The way he'd looked at Tyler like his music actually mattered. For the first time in months, Tyler felt something shift inside him. Not quite hope, but maybe the beginning of it. He packed up his guitar, pocketed the money, and headed home as the last light faded from the sky. Tyler couldn't stop thinking about the old man. Even at work that night, as he loaded boxes onto pallets and scanned inventory codes, his mind kept drifting back to the park. To Robert, to the way he'd listened so carefully, to that $50 bill that was now safely tucked in Tyler's wallet. $50 might not sound like much to some people, but to Tyler it was the difference between eating properly for a week or surviving on ramen noodles and peanut butter. More than the money, though, it was the validation. Someone had actually connected with his music. Really connected, not just tossed some change while walking by. The next few days passed in their usual rhythm. Work, sleep, music, repeat. Tyler went back to the park on Wednesday and Thursday, hoping maybe Robert would be there again. He wasn't. The crowds were thinner as the weather got colder and the tips were sparse. On Thursday, he made $4.37. Friday was better, almost $12. But there was no sign of the old man in the gray overcoat. By Saturday, Tyler had almost convinced himself that the encounter had been a one-time thing. A lucky moment, the universe throwing him a bone before going back to its usual indifference. He spent Saturday morning at a local coffee shop that let musicians play for tips. Made about $15 and got a free coffee out of it. Small victories. Monday afternoon, his phone rang. Unknown number. Tyler almost didn't answer. He got a lot of spam calls, people trying to sell him things or scam him in various creative ways. But something made him pick up. "Hello? Hi, is this Tyler Morrison?" The voice was female, professional, confident. "Yeah, this is Tyler. Who's calling?" "My name is Jennifer Park. I'm an A&R representative with Summit Records. Do you have a few minutes to talk?" Tyler's first thought was that this was definitely a scam. Nobody from a real record label just called random musicians out of the blue. Summit Records was huge. They had some of the biggest artists in the world on their roster. "I think you might have the wrong number," Tyler said carefully. Are you the Tyler Morrison who performs in Riverside Park? Guitar player, writes original songs? Tyler's heart started beating faster. Yeah, that's me. How did you? This is going to sound unusual, Jennifer said, and Tyler could hear the smile in her voice. But our CEO personally brought in a recording of you performing last Tuesday. He recorded you on his phone. The song about still being here? He's been playing it nonstop for the past week, and he's insisting that we sign you immediately. Tyler sat down on his bed. His legs suddenly felt unsteady. Your CEO? Who's your CEO? Robert Thornton. The name hit Tyler like a physical force. Robert Thornton. He knew that name. Every musician knew that name. Robert Thornton was a living legend in the music industry. He'd started as a producer in the 70s, then moved into artist development and eventually became CEO of Summit Records 15 years ago. He'd discovered and developed some of the most successful artists of the past 4 decades. Multiple Grammy winners, Hall of Famers, household names. Wait, Tyler said, his voice shaky. Robert Thornton? The old man I played for in the park was Robert Thornton? The very same, Jennifer confirmed. He still goes on walks through that park almost every week. Says it helps him think, keeps him connected to real people and real music. Apparently he's been hoping to find someone interesting for months, and then he heard you. Tyler couldn't speak. His mouth was open, but no words were coming out. Tyler? You still there? Yeah, sorry. This is a lot to process. I understand. Believe me, this isn't how we usually do things. Normally there's a whole process. Submissions, showcases, meetings with A&R staff. But when Robert Thornton says he's found something special, we listen. He's never wrong about these things. What happens now? Tyler asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Well, first I'd like to meet with you. Tomorrow if you're available. We can sit down, talk about your music, your vision, what you're looking for in your career. Then if everything feels right, we'd move forward with a development deal. Bring you into the studio, work on your songs, see what we can create together. Robert wants to be personally involved in the process, which is extremely rare. He doesn't do that for just anyone anymore. Tyler looked around his cramped studio apartment. At the water stain on the ceiling he kept meaning to tell his landlord about. At his guitar in the corner, held together with duct tape in one spot where the strap had torn. At his life, which was about to change in ways he couldn't even begin to imagine. Tomorrow works, he said. What time? They made plans to meet at the Summit Records offices downtown at 2 in the afternoon. Jennifer gave him the address and told him to come to the main reception desk. Someone would be expecting him. She reminded him to bring his guitar and maybe have a few songs ready to play just in case. Then she said goodbye and hung up. Tyler sat in silence for a long time after the call ended. He kept expecting to wake up, for his alarm to go off and reveal this was all just a dream, brought on by too many night shifts and not enough sleep. But his apartment remained real around him. The phone in his hand was real. The conversation had actually happened. He called his mom. She answered on the 3rd ring, and Tyler could hear the TV in the background. Hey, honey, what's up? Aren't you supposed to be sleeping before work? Mom, you're not going to believe this, Tyler said, and the whole story came pouring out. The man in the park, the phone call, Robert Thornton, Summit Records, all of it. His mom listened without interrupting, and when he finished, she was quiet for a moment. Baby, are you sure this is real? There are a lot of scams out there. People who prey on artists. I looked it up while we were talking, Tyler said. Jennifer Park is a real person. She's on the Summit Records website in the A&R department. And Robert Thornton? Mom, I should have recognized him. I've seen his picture in articles. I just never imagined someone like that would be sitting in a park listening to nobody's street musicians. That's how he stays good at what he does, his mom said thoughtfully. By remembering what real music sounds like. By listening to people who are doing it because they love it, not because they're already famous. I'm scared, Tyler admitted. What if I get there tomorrow and they realize they made a mistake? What if my music isn't actually good enough? Tyler James Morrison, his mom said firmly. That man sat and listened to you for an hour. He recorded you on his phone. He's been playing your song on repeat for a week. He didn't make a mistake. He saw what I've always seen. What your dad saw. You have something special. Now stop doubting yourself and get some sleep. You have a big day tomorrow. After they hung up, Tyler tried to sleep but couldn't. His mind was racing. He kept picking up his guitar and playing, putting it down, picking it up again. He thought about all the open mic nights where nobody paid attention. All the demos he'd recorded on his laptop and sent to labels that never responded. All the times he'd wondered if he was just being stupid, chasing something impossible while his life passed him by. And then he thought about Robert in the park, about the way the old man had smiled when Tyler played, about how he'd asked to hear the song 3 times, not because he felt sorry for a struggling musician, but because he genuinely connected with the music. Tuesday morning, Tyler woke up early despite barely sleeping. He took a long shower, put on his nicest jeans and a button-up shirt that only had one small stain that you couldn't really see if he kept his arm down. He spent 20 minutes trying to fix his hair before giving up and accepting that it was going to do whatever it wanted. The Summit Records building was downtown, all glass and steel and modern design. Tyler had walked past it 100 times but never imagined he'd actually go inside. The lobby was enormous with artwork on the walls and a receptionist desk that looked like it cost more than Tyler's car. His car that didn't even run anymore and was currently parked behind his apartment building. "I'm here to see Jennifer Park," Tyler said to the receptionist, trying to keep his voice steady. "I have a 2 o'clock appointment." "Tyler Morrison," the receptionist smiled warmly. "Of course, Mr. Morrison. Ms. Park is expecting you. Please have a seat and she'll be right down." Tyler sat in one of the modern chairs, his guitar case propped next to him, and tried not to look as overwhelmed as he felt. Around him, people walked through the lobby with purpose. Everyone looked successful, put together like they belonged in this world of glass buildings and expensive art. 5 minutes later, a woman in her 30s approached him. She was wearing a blazer and had her hair in a neat ponytail. She smiled and extended her hand. "Tyler, I'm Jennifer. It's so great to finally meet you in person." Her handshake was firm and confident. Tyler stood up, nearly knocking over his guitar case in the process. "Nice to meet you too," he managed. "Come on up," Jennifer said. "Robert's already in the conference room. He's been looking forward to this all morning." They took an elevator to the 8th floor. Jennifer made small talk, asking about his trip downtown, whether he'd found the building okay. Tyler answered on autopilot, his brain not quite processing that this was actually happening. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. And sitting at the head of the table, looking exactly like he had in the park except maybe a little more official in a suit instead of an overcoat, was Robert Thornton. He stood up when Tyler entered, that same kind smile on his face. "Tyler," Robert said warmly, "I'm so glad you could make it. Please sit down. We have a lot to talk about." And just like that, Tyler's life shifted into something completely new. Robert gestured for Tyler to sit, and Jennifer took a seat across the table. Tyler carefully placed his guitar case on the floor beside him, trying not to think about how out of place he felt in this sleek conference room, with its expensive furniture and panoramic city views. "First, I want to apologize for the deception," Robert said, settling back into his chair. "I should have introduced myself properly in the park, but I found over the years that when people know who I am, they perform differently. They get nervous or they try to impress me. I wanted to hear you the way you really are, when you're just playing for yourself." "I understand," Tyler said, though his voice came out shakier than he'd intended. Robert smiled. "You don't need to be nervous now either. This is just a conversation between people who love music. That's all it's ever been." He leaned forward, his expression growing more serious. "Tyler, I've been in this industry for almost 50 years. I've heard thousands of singers, tens of thousands of songs. Most of them are fine, technically proficient, well-produced, marketable, but very few of them have what you have." "What do I have?" Tyler asked, genuinely curious. "Authenticity," Robert said simply. "When you played that song in the park, I didn't hear someone trying to sound like what's popular right now. I didn't hear someone calculating what might get radio play or streaming numbers. I heard someone expressing something real, something that came from inside you. That's increasingly rare in modern music." Jennifer nodded in agreement. "I've listened to the recording at least 20 times since Robert shared it with me. There's an emotional honesty in your voice and your lyrics that's hard to manufacture. It's the kind of thing that makes people stop what they're doing and actually listen." Tyler felt his face getting warm. He wasn't used to this kind of praise, especially not from industry professionals. "Thank you. I mean, I just write about what I feel, what I'm going through. I don't really know any other way to do it." "Don't learn another way," Robert said firmly. "That's your strength. Too many artists lose that authenticity once they get into the system. They start second-guessing themselves trying to please everyone, making music by committee. I don't want that to happen to you. So what exactly are you offering? Tyler asked, trying to focus on the practical side of things before he got too caught up in the moment. Jennifer pulled out a folder. We'd like to offer you a development deal. Basically, we'd bring you into our studio, pair you with some of our producers and musicians, and work on developing a collection of songs. Your original material primarily, but refined and produced to a professional level. We'd also work on your stage presence, media training, all the skills you'll need as your career grows. The key word there is grows, Robert interjected. We're not trying to change who you are. We're trying to help you become the best version of yourself as an artist. Think of it like this. You have natural talent, raw and powerful. We want to help you refine that talent, give you better tools to express what you're already feeling. Tyler's head was spinning. A week ago, he'd been wondering if he should just give up on music entirely. Now he was sitting in a record label conference room being offered a development deal by a legend. What would I have to do? Tyler asked. I mean, practically. I still have my warehouse job. Bills to pay. You'd quit that job, Jennifer said matter-of-factly. As part of the deal, you'd receive a stipend. Enough to cover your living expenses while we work together. You'd be in the studio most days, working with producers, collaborating with other writers, recording demos. It's a full-time commitment. We're investing in you, Robert added, and we're asking you to invest in yourself, to trust that this is worth dedicating yourself to completely. Tyler thought about the warehouse, the night shifts that left him exhausted and drained, the way he'd watch the clock counting down the minutes until he could leave and get back to his music. The idea of quitting, of making music his actual job, felt both terrifying and exhilarating. How long would this last? Tyler asked. The initial development period would be 6 months, Jennifer explained. During that time, we'd work intensively on your material. At the end of 6 months, we'd evaluate what we've created. If everything is going well, which I have every reason to believe it will be, we'd move forward with a full recording contract. Album production, marketing, distribution, tour support, the whole package. And if it doesn't go well? Tyler had to ask, even though he didn't want to think about that possibility. Then you walk away with 6 months of professional experience, a portfolio of recorded material, and connections throughout the industry, Robert said. But Tyler, I don't make offers like this lightly. I know you're going to succeed. I've been doing this long enough to recognize it when I see it. Tyler looked down at his hands. His fingertips were calloused from years of playing guitar. These hands had worked night shifts, struggled to pay rent, held on to a dream that everyone told him was impractical. Now those same hands were being offered a chance that most musicians never got. Can I ask you something? Tyler said, looking up at Robert. Why do you still go to that park? Why were you there that day? Robert leaned back in his chair, a distant look in his eyes. When I first started in this business, music was different. Artists developed over years, not overnight. They played in small venues, built real fan bases, learned their craft. Somewhere along the way, the industry changed. Everything became about viral moments, algorithms, whatever would get clicks and streams. We started producing products instead of artists. He paused, his gaze returning to Tyler. I go to that park because that's where real music still exists. People playing not because they're trying to become famous, but because they need to express something. I found some of my best artists that way over the years. People who were doing it for the right reasons, who had something genuine to say. When I heard you playing that day, I knew immediately. You're the real thing, Tyler. Jennifer smiled. You should have seen him when he came into the office that Tuesday afternoon. He walked straight to my desk, played the recording, and said, "Find this person immediately. I don't care what it takes." I've been working here for 8 years, and I've never seen him that excited about an artist. The song resonated with me, Robert said simply. I'm an old man now, Tyler. I've had success, built a career, achieved more than I probably deserved. But I still remember what it felt like to struggle, to pour everything into something and not know if it would ever matter. Your song captured that feeling perfectly. The persistence, the uncertainty, but also the refusal to give up. That's universal. Everyone understands that feeling, whether they're struggling artists or working regular jobs or raising families. You tapped into something fundamental about the human experience. Tyler felt his eyes getting watery and blinked hard. He wasn't going to cry in this conference room, not in front of these successful people in their nice clothes and their important jobs. I want to do this, Tyler said, his voice stronger now. I want to take the deal. Whatever I need to sign, whatever I need to do, I'm in. Jennifer smiled and pulled out more papers from her folder. Excellent. Obviously, you should take these contracts home, read through them carefully. Hire a lawyer if you want, though the terms are pretty standard for development deals. There's no pressure to sign today. I'll read them, Tyler promised, but I already know my answer. When can I start? How's Monday? Robert asked. That gives you a few days to settle things with your current job, get your affairs in order. We'll set you up with one of our best producers, Michael Chen. He's worked with some incredible artists and he's great at bringing out the best in people without overshadowing their unique voice. They spent the next hour going over details, the studio schedule, the stipend amount, what kinds of songs they'd work on first. Jennifer explained the recording process, how they'd start with demos and gradually build toward full productions. Robert talked about his vision for Tyler's sound, how they wanted to preserve that raw emotional quality while giving it professional polish. When Tyler finally left the building, stepping back out into the afternoon sun with a folder full of contracts under his arm and his guitar case in his hand, he felt like he was floating. The street looked the same as it always had. Same buildings, same traffic, same people walking past focused on their own lives. But everything had changed. He called his mom from the sidewalk, right there in the middle of downtown foot traffic. How did it go? She asked immediately. Mom, they want to sign me. Like actually sign me. A development deal? 6 months, then a full contract if things go well. They're paying me to make music. This is really happening. His mom started crying, which made Tyler start crying, and they were both just sobbing on the phone like idiots while people walked around Tyler on the sidewalk giving him weird looks. Your father would be so proud, she said through her tears. Tyler's dad had passed away 4 years ago, right before Tyler had really committed to pursuing music seriously. He'd always encouraged Tyler's playing, had been his biggest supporter. I know, Mom, I wish he could see this. He can, baby. I believe that. And he's probably up there saying, I told you so to everyone who'll listen. Tyler spent the rest of the day walking around the city in a daze. He went to the park, sat on his usual bench, and just absorbed the reality of what had happened. A week ago, he'd been here playing for spare change, wondering if anyone would ever care about his music. Now he was about to become a professional musician. Not someone playing for tips, not someone working night shifts and dreaming, an actual, real, signed artist with a major record label. That night, Tyler went to work at the warehouse like normal, but when his manager asked him to stay late to help with extra inventory, Tyler took a deep breath and said what he never thought he'd get to say. Actually, I need to talk to you about something. I'm putting in my 2 weeks' notice. The manager looked surprised. You got another job? Tyler smiled. Yeah, something in music. It's kind of a long story. As he worked his shift, loading boxes and scanning codes, Tyler kept thinking about Monday, about walking into that studio for the first time, about working with professional producers and musicians, about his song, the one he'd written in his cramped apartment, being refined and polished by people who'd worked with the biggest artists in the world. The next week couldn't come fast enough. Monday morning felt like the first day of a completely different life. Tyler woke up without an alarm for the first time in 3 years. No more night shifts, no more warehouse. Just him and his music and the chance he'd been waiting for since he first picked up a guitar. He showed up at Summit Records at 9 in the morning, guitar case in hand, wearing the same button-up shirt from his meeting with Robert and Jennifer. The receptionist recognized him this time and smiled warmly. Good morning, Mr. Morrison. Jennifer left a message that you should head up to Studio C on the 4th floor. Michael Chen is expecting you. The elevator ride up felt longer than it should have. Tyler's stomach was doing flips. He'd played hundreds of times before at open mics in coffee shops and parks, but this was different. This was professionals. People who'd worked with the best. What if they realized he wasn't actually that good? What if the magic Robert heard in the park had just been a fluke? Studio C was at the end of a hallway lined with gold and platinum records. Tyler recognized some of the artists' names from the plaques. These walls represented decades of hits, millions of albums sold, careers that had changed the landscape of music, and now he was walking down that same hallway. He knocked on the studio door and heard a voice call out, "Come in." The studio was bigger than Tyler's entire apartment. There was a control room with an enormous mixing board covered in hundreds of buttons and knobs, computer screens showing colorful waveforms, and speakers that looked like they cost more than a car. Through a thick glass window, Tyler could see the recording room itself with microphones, instruments, soundproofing panels on the walls. A man in his 40s turned around in the engineer's chair and smiled. He had messy black hair, glasses, and was wearing a vintage band t-shirt.
Tyler, I'm Michael.
Come on in, make yourself comfortable. Michael had an easy, relaxed energy that immediately put Tyler at ease. He wasn't what Tyler had expected from a high-level producer. No suit, no intimidating demeanor. Just a guy who clearly loved music. Robert played me the recording from the park, Michael said, gesturing for Tyler to sit down. That song is special, man. Really special. The emotion in your voice, the melody, the lyrics. It's got everything. Thanks, Tyler said, setting his guitar case down carefully. I appreciate that. So here's how I like to work, Michael explained. First day, we're just going to hang out. Talk about music. I want to hear your influences, what artists inspire you, what kind of sound you're going for. Then maybe you can play me a few songs, whatever you're comfortable with. No pressure, no recording. Just two musicians getting to know each other. Sound good? Tyler nodded, feeling some of the tension leave his shoulders. Yeah, that sounds perfect. They spent the first hour just talking. Michael asked about Tyler's musical background, and Tyler told him about learning guitar from his dad, about the years of playing open mics, about the songs he'd written sitting in his apartment at 3 a.m. after work shifts. Michael shared his own story too, how he'd started as a studio assistant, worked his way up, learned from some of the legendary producers of the past few decades. The thing I love about this job, Michael said, is helping artists find their voice, not changing them into something they're not, but helping them express what's already inside them in the clearest, most powerful way possible. That's what I want to do with you. Around 10:30, Robert appeared in the studio doorway. He was carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing his gray overcoat over a sweater. How are we doing in here? He asked, handing one coffee to Michael and setting the other down for Tyler. Just getting acquainted, Michael said. Tyler was telling me about how he writes. It's a really organic process, very feeling-based. As it should be, Robert said, settling into one of the chairs. Tyler, I wanted to stop by because I want to be clear about something. My role here isn't to hover or micromanage. Michael is brilliant at what he does, and you two need space to create. But I do want to be involved in this process, especially in the beginning. I don't do that for every artist anymore. But your music moved me in a way that doesn't happen often. I want to be part of helping it reach its full potential. I'd like that, Tyler said honestly. Having Robert there felt right. Like having an experienced guide on a journey through unfamiliar territory. Good. Robert smiled. Now, how about you play us something? Whatever feels right. Tyler took out his guitar. His hands were shaking slightly as he adjusted the tuning, but once he started playing, everything else faded away. He played Still Here, the song that had started everything. Then he played another original, a faster one about leaving his hometown and chasing dreams in the city. Then a third song, quieter and more introspective, about missing his dad. When he finished, both Michael and Robert were quiet for a moment. Tyler, Michael finally said, you have at least an album's worth of material in you already, don't you? I've written probably 40 or 50 songs over the past few years, Tyler admitted. I didn't know if any of them were any good, so I just kept writing more. Robert laughed. That's exactly what you should have been doing. And yes, they're good. They're very good. Some will need work, refinement, but the bones are there. They spent the rest of that first day going through Tyler's catalog of songs. He'd play a verse and chorus, and Michael would make notes asking questions about the lyrics, suggesting maybe a different chord here or a rhythm change there. Nothing felt forced or fake. It was collaborative, like jamming with friends who happened to be incredibly talented. By the end of the day, they'd identified 6 songs to focus on initially. Still Here would be first, of course. That was the cornerstone. But there were others that Robert and Michael both felt had real potential. Tomorrow we'll start recording demos, Michael explained as they wrapped up. Just you and your guitar, like in the park. We'll capture that raw feeling first, then we can build from there. Add other instruments, harmonies, whatever the song needs. The next few weeks passed in a blur of creativity. Tyler would arrive at the studio each morning, and he and Michael would work on arrangements, try different approaches, experiment with sounds. Sometimes Robert would drop in, listen to what they were doing, offer suggestions or encouragement. Tyler learned more about music production in those weeks than he had in his entire life before. Michael taught him about song structure, how to build dynamics, when to hold back and when to let loose. But he never tried to change Tyler's fundamental style or voice. Instead, he found ways to enhance what was already there. They brought in other musicians. A drummer named Pete who had this intuitive sense of when to be subtle and when to drive the energy. A bass player named Lisa, who could create grooves that made your whole body move. A pianist named Derek who added textures and emotions that Tyler didn't even know were missing until he heard them. Working with these professionals was humbling but also inspiring. They treated Tyler like an equal, like his songs were worth their time and talent. And somehow, piece by piece, those songs he'd written in his tiny apartment were transforming into something bigger, richer, more complete. Still Here was the first one they fully produced. When Michael played back the final mix, Tyler almost didn't recognize it. It was still his song, still his voice and his words, but everything had been elevated. The guitar was clearer and more resonant. The drums came in at exactly the right moment, building the emotion. There were strings in the chorus that made Tyler's heart ache in the best way. "That's incredible," Tyler said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That's your song," Michael corrected. "We just helped it become what it was always meant to be. Robert was there for that playback." He sat with his eyes closed, listening to the whole thing without moving. When it ended, he opened his eyes and looked at Tyler. "This is going to change your life," he said simply. Jennifer came by the studio frequently to check on progress and start planning the next steps. "Once we have a few songs fully produced, we'll need to start thinking about release strategy," she explained. "Radio promotion, playlist pitching, maybe some social media content. But that's down the road. Right now, just focus on making the best music you can." About 6 weeks into the process, Tyler was taking a break in the studio lounge when Robert found him. The old man sat down with his ever-present cup of coffee and studied Tyler for a moment. "How are you handling all of this?" Robert asked. "Really, it's a lot to adjust to." Tyler thought about it. "Honestly, sometimes I wake up and forget that this is my life now. Like I expect to hear my alarm going off for the warehouse shift. Then I remember and it still doesn't feel completely real." "That's normal," Robert said. "You're living a dream that most people never get close to. The important thing is to stay grounded in why you're doing this. Not for fame or money, though those may come, but because you have something to say through your music, something that matters." "Did you always know you wanted to be in music?" Tyler asked. Robert smiled. "I grew up poor, in a neighborhood where people didn't become music executives. But I loved it. Every spare penny went to records. I'd listened to the same album 50 times trying to understand what made it work. When I was 20, I talked my way into a mailroom job at a small label. Worked my way up from there. It wasn't easy, and there were plenty of times I wanted to quit, but I couldn't imagine doing anything else. That's how I feel," Tyler said. "Even when I was broke and exhausted and everyone told me I was wasting my time, I couldn't stop. Music isn't what I do. It's who I am." "I know," Robert said. "That's why I stopped in the park that day. I could hear it in the way you played. You weren't performing. You were expressing something essential. That's what makes a real artist." By the end of the 3rd month, they had 5 songs fully produced, Still Here, and 4 others that Tyler had written over the past few years. Each one felt perfect, like the version of the song that had always existed in Tyler's head, but that he'd never been able to capture on his own. "I think we're ready," Jennifer announced at a Monday morning meeting. "I want to start with Still Here as a single. Get it out to radio, pitch it to streaming playlists, build some buzz. Then we follow up with the other songs over the next few months. By the time we're ready to talk about a full album, you'll have an audience waiting for it." "When would it release?" Tyler asked, his heart racing. 2 weeks, Jennifer said. "I know that's fast, but I have a good feeling about this. The timing is right." Those 2 weeks were a frenzy of activity. Tyler did photo shoots for promotional materials, his first ever professional photos. He met with a social media manager who helped him set up accounts and start building an online presence. He did practice interviews, learning how to talk about his music and his story in ways that felt authentic, but also engaging. The night before Still Here was supposed to hit radio stations across the country, Tyler couldn't sleep. He lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling of his apartment, the same apartment where he'd written that song months ago when everything felt hopeless. Tomorrow, that song would be on the radio. Real radio, the same stations he'd listened to while driving to work, while eating dinner, while wishing someone would hear his music. And now they would. Thousands of people, maybe hundreds of thousands. His phone buzzed with a text. It was from Robert. Get some rest. Tomorrow your life changes. You've earned this. I'm proud of you. Tyler smiled in the darkness and finally closed his eyes. The first time Tyler heard his song on the radio, he was sitting in the Summit Records conference room with Jennifer, Michael, and Robert. They'd all gathered there specifically for this moment, Jennifer tracking which stations were playing it on her laptop while everyone else sat around nervously. Okay, XPK just confirmed they're playing it in their 11 o'clock rotation, Jennifer said, pulling up a streaming feed of the station on her computer. That's in 3 minutes. Tyler felt like he might throw up. This was it. The moment he'd imagined 1,000 times but never quite believed would actually happen. His song, the one he'd written feeling broke and desperate and hopeful all at once, was about to be broadcast to an entire city. The DJ's voice came through the speakers talking about traffic and weather. Then, coming up next, we've got a new artist for you. This is Tyler Morrison with Still Here. And folks, this one's special. Listen to this. The opening guitar notes filled the room. Tyler's own playing, refined and polished by Michael's production, but still fundamentally his. Then his voice came in, singing words he'd written at 3 a.m. after a particularly brutal warehouse shift. I'm still here, even when the night won't end. I'm still here, waiting for the morning to begin. It sounded different coming through radio speakers, more real somehow, like it belonged there, like it had always been meant to exist in this space. When the song ended, the DJ came back on. That was Tyler Morrison with Still Here. I'm telling you, that's going to be huge. Mark my words. Beautiful song, really hit me right here. He must have gestured to his chest, though of course they couldn't see him. Tyler looked around the room. Michael was grinning. Jennifer was already typing notes on her laptop. Robert had this satisfied smile on his face, the kind of expression that said he'd known this would happen all along. That's one, Jennifer said. We've got it scheduled on 47 stations today. Tomorrow it goes to another 60. Over the next 48 hours, Tyler's life became surreal. His phone started blowing up with messages from people he hadn't heard from in years. Old friends from high school, distant relatives. People who'd ignored his music for years suddenly wanting to tell him they'd heard his song on the radio. But more importantly, strangers started responding. The Summit Records social media team showed Tyler the comments pouring in on streaming platforms and social media. People were connecting with the song in exactly the way Tyler had hoped they would. This song made me cry in my car on the way to work. I've been struggling so much lately, and this just spoke to me. Where has this artist been? This is what music should sound like. I've had this on repeat for 2 hours. Can't stop listening. By day 3, Still Here was getting requested. Radio stations were playing it multiple times a day because listeners were calling in asking for it. Streaming numbers were climbing steadily. Music bloggers were writing about it. Jennifer called an emergency meeting. Okay, this is exceeding our expectations. We need to move up our timeline. Tyler, how do you feel about doing some interviews? Local radio stations, maybe a few podcasts. People want to know who you are and hear your story. I'll do whatever you need, Tyler said, still trying to process the fact that people were actually requesting his song. The first interview was with a morning radio show in the city. Tyler sat across from 2 DJs who'd been doing the morning drive for 15 years. They were friendly and genuinely interested in his story. So Tyler, tell us about writing Still Here. What was going on in your life when you wrote this? Tyler took a breath and decided to be honest. I was working night shifts at a warehouse, barely making rent, seriously questioning whether I should give up on music entirely. I'd been at it for over a decade and nothing was happening. But I couldn't let it go. So I wrote this song about that feeling, about still being here even when everything feels impossible. Man, that's powerful, one of the DJs said. And now here you are, your song blowing up on radio. That must feel incredible. It doesn't feel real yet, Tyler admitted. A month ago, I was playing for spare change in the park. Now people across the country are hearing my music. It's overwhelming in the best way. The interview went viral online. Clips of it spread across social media. People loved the authenticity of Tyler's story. A guy who'd struggled, worked a regular job, kept believing in his dream, and then got discovered in the most unlikely way. More interview requests came flooding in. Podcasts about music and creativity, news shows wanting to feature him as a feel-good story, music magazines asking for profiles. Robert advised him carefully through all of it. Be yourself, he said. Don't try to be what you think people want. That honesty is what makes you special. The moment you start performing a version of yourself, you lose what made people connect with you in the first place. 2 weeks after the song first hit radio, Jennifer called Tyler with news. Still Here just broke into the top 40 on the national charts. You're officially a charting artist. Tyler had to sit down. Top 40. He used to listen to those charts wondering what it felt like to be one of those artists. Now he was one. There's more, Jennifer continued, and Tyler could hear the excitement in her voice. We've been getting calls from talent bookers. The Late Night Show wants you to perform. Next week, if you're ready. The Late Night Show? Tyler repeated. Like on television? With the guy who does the monologue? The very same. It's one of the biggest platforms in the country. Millions of viewers. Are you up for it? Tyler thought about the park bench. About his guitar case with 68 cents in it. About Robert listening to him play like his music mattered. The preparation for the TV appearance was intense. Rehearsals with the show's band, blocking out where he'd stand, what he'd wear. The show's producers wanted him to perform Still Here, but also answer a few questions from the host first. The night of the show, Tyler stood backstage watching the opening monologue on a monitor. His heart was pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. Michael was there with him and Robert had come too. Remember, Robert said quietly, it's just like the park. You're playing for people who need to hear this song. The venue doesn't matter. The message does. When Tyler's name was announced and he walked out onto that stage, the audience applause washing over him, he felt a strange calm settle in. The host was kind and genuinely interested. They talked about Tyler's journey, about the park, about Robert discovering him. And Robert Thornton believed in you immediately? The host asked. He did, Tyler said, which still blows my mind. I was just another guy with a guitar, you know? But he heard something in the song, and he gave me a chance that changed everything. Well, let's hear this song that's been climbing the charts. Tyler Morrison, everybody! The studio lights dimmed. Tyler sat on a stool with his guitar, a spotlight on him, and for a moment he forgot about the cameras and the millions of people watching. He just played. The same song, the same emotion, the same truth he'd been trying to express all along. When he finished, the audience erupted. The host was shaking his head in amazement. That was incredible. Tyler Morrison, everyone. Still Here is available now. The next morning, Still Here jumped 20 spots on the charts. The performance had been posted online and was being shared everywhere. Tyler's social media following exploded. Suddenly, he had hundreds of thousands of people interested in what he was doing, waiting for more music.